Hey, welcome to the Thriving Ministry Teams podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about all things related to the church leadership, training, and discipleship. I'm Scott Magdalene. I am one of your hosts. I'm also the CEO of Trained Up, and this is Kevin Fontenot. Can you help us pronounce your last name there, Kevin?
Yeah, it's Fontenot. It's one of those weird French names. So if you put the T on the end, I'll just never forgive you. But other than that, it's okay.
I know he looks like he came straight from Scotland on a boat, but it is actually a French name. That big old red beard, man. That's part of our brand now, by the way. And if you're listening to this and you're not able to see it, then you need to check it out on YouTube because he's got this just righteous beard. Anyway, I'm Scott. This is Kevin. We're your hosts for the Thriving Ministry Teams podcast. We run a company called Trained Up. Trained Up helps ministry leaders do training for volunteers and leaders, and they also do some Bible training with our tools. You can check us out at trainedup.church. Today, we're talking about something specific that is near and dear to my heart. It's the survey tool. We're going to talk about surveys in ministry. I love surveys. I think that they have a ton of uses. I'm obsessed with them, really. I know that Kevin has a deep passion for a specific type of survey, which I'm going to build some suspense here. We're going to talk about later. But first, I want to do this little podcast segue thing, right? So I want to talk about something different. I want to talk about tools because as I've gotten older, I like tools more and more, and I like fixing things. Partly because I'm a little bit cheap and I don't like buying new things. I just want to fix stuff. And partly because it's just a good hobby for me to be away from a computer because I work at a computer all day. So we're going to talk about some tools, but first, Kevin, here's my impromptu question for you. What is your favorite tool? Do you have a favorite tool? What is your favorite tool? And what do you like to fix or do with that tool?
Oh, man. So I got a closet full of tools right over there. My wife and I live in an apartment, so I don't get to use them very often. But probably my favorite tool is going to be a Dremel. So I had this cordless Dremel forever that I got in high school that I bought that was like $30 and was really excited about it. And it bit the dust a couple of years ago. So I've been Dremel-less for a couple of years. And my mom wanted to get me something for Christmas. And I just kept not giving her an answer and was like, no, I don't need anything. It's fine, Mom. Don't give me anything for Christmas this year. You know, we're coming down. We're going to give you stuff. She's like, no, I'm getting you something for Christmas. What do you want? I'm like, well, you can give me a Dremel and a Lord of the Rings welcome mat and we'll be good. And so
so geeky.
Of course. I mean, awesome. I got to let out my geeky side. So it says you shall not pass on the welcome mat. So it's not so welcome mat. But got my Dremel again. And this week got this nice little boom arm for the microphone here. And
can we see it? Can you show it to the YouTube folks?
Uh-oh.
I
don't know if you can see it or not.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's one of those clips onto your desk. It's nice. Yeah. I like it.
And so it has the cord where it's just kind of going all over the place. And so I got to get my Dremel out and make it to where the cord goes where I want it to go.
So you're also one of the tidiest and neatest people that I know. So that doesn't surprise me that you would break out a tool to organize a cord.
See, now my wife's going to hear this and now I'm going to get in trouble because my office is super neat and the cords are all in place. But the rest of the apartment, not so much.
That's awesome. Well, I have a favorite tool. Actually, I have two favorite tools. And they're very different. One is the cordless impact drill with lithium-ion battery. Just about any type that's a high-quality cordless impact drill. Woo, I love it, man. It's so handy, especially if you can do any kind of woodwork that's not in the shed. Super handy. Number two is this, where I keep it with me at all times. It's a Leatherman Skele-Tool. If you can't see this, it's just a simple little multi-tool from Leatherman. It's like, I think $75 or something like that at REI. You can probably find them cheaper when it's not at REI because REI is not cheap. Anyway, I love this thing because, well, number one, it's just a great little knife. It's got a nice knife on a 2-inch, maybe 2.5-inch blade. But the rest of the tools are really versatile in what I can do with them. So I keep it with me at all times. It's always on my belt loop. And I can do tons of stuff with it. So the thing that I love, there's two great things about a tool. My favorite tool is that it's always with me. So like the best tool that you can use it when something breaks is the one you have with you. It's sort of like that rule about the best camera is the one you have with you. And then the second thing is that it can do lots of things. So it's not like I'm just carrying one tool that can do one thing. I can kind of use the tool in different contexts to fix different things. Like earlier today, I've got this old beater van and it's carbureted and not fuel injected. And so it was idling slow. So I was able to use my trusty dusty multi-tool to adjust the timing on both carburetors. So It was, or just the throttle anyway. So it's great to be able to have.
We talked about me being a nerd for the Lord of the Rings, but you're geeking out over this van and carburetors and all this stuff that's going way over my head. So who's the real nerd here, Scott?
We can both claim nerdiness in different areas. How about that?
Okay.
So as far as tools, I'm a tools guy. That's my favorite tool. What we're going to do is we're going to shift gears and talk about a ministry tool, which is the survey. We're going to specifically talk about 3 ministry tools. And the ministry survey tool has kind of this multi-tool that has lots of uses, and we're going to talk about 3 uses of the survey tool. So the first one is, I'm actually just going to hand this off to Kevin. It's the first one is the discipleship survey, or the spiritual health survey. I'm going to hand this off to Kevin because Kevin lives and breathes this type of survey. And I'm going to let him kind of walk through what it is, how it can work, and then he's got a kind of an announcement that I think he may want to talk about.
Yeah, so spiritual health surveys are something that I probably got introduced to probably about a decade ago when I was, just coming up in church. And a few years ago, my wife and I were serving on staff. We had joined a church. It was about 2 years old that hadn't been having small groups, and we joined on as small groups and over communications. So as we were developing out what we wanted those small groups to look like, we knew that we wanted to gauge our effectiveness and see how we were doing as a ministry. Are we actually making disciples? Are people growing when they're in our small groups? And figure out kind of the weak points of what we're doing, areas that we can improve in. And so I started taking kind of a deep dive into these spiritual health surveys and really looking at what was out there, and ended up developing our own based on a lot of different surveys that were out there, and just kind of refining it of what really made sense over a lot of different spiritual health areas. And so we've kind of refined that over time and have continued to use it for myself. It's something that I visit regularly for my personal time with the Lord, just to see how I'm growing, kind of keep tabs on the areas of trending up or down in, and just figure out, it allows you to take an assessment of yourself and see how you're growing or not growing in the Lord. And it's a really powerful tool because of that. And so we've developed out this spiritual health survey that we use at Disciple Labs that covers 8 different health areas inside of a believer's life. And so that's going to be Bible application, character, evangelism, fellowship, giving, serving, prayer, and worship. And so all these things kind of, meet what is a healthy disciple of Jesus. And so we talked last week about authentic discipleship on the episode 2 of the podcast, and we alluded to this a little bit, but those 8 areas really make a big impact in how someone is growing in their walk with the Lord. And so what we do with the spiritual health survey is we send it out to our people. They fill out this survey. Typically it's been a paper form in the past, and they kind of keep those, and we don't really get a lot of good data from it. Occasionally they'll share it back with you, but a lot of people are kind of sensitive about sharing that information. So what we've done is last year we were talking with a lot of pastors while we were demoing trained up to people, and just kept hearing over and over again that pastors wanted this tool to kind of help them measure spiritual health and kind of measure how discipleship was happening in their churches. And so we got the great idea of making Disciple Labs, which is an automated spiritual health survey that we've created that has its own platform. And we're launching that this week. So it launched April 9th on Monday. This podcast is going out on Wednesday, April 11th. And so with that, we have a huge launch that we're doing where we're giving out 30% off of Disciple Labs for life. And so you can use the code LAUNCH30, that's LAUNCH30 at disciplelabs.com to sign up. If you're listening after the fact, this code is only good until April 13th. If it's before then, use the code LAUNCH30. You'll get 30% off for life. And for life, forever.
I like a lifetime discount personally. Sign up once and get that discount every single month. That like the credit card gets billed as a 30% off. It's like,
it's nice.
It's nice, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So Disciple Labs, I'm excited about it. Kevin's been kind of managing and running this thing. It's really a thing of beauty. I saw the first. He kind of did a video demo and shared it with me a while ago, and man, it got me so excited. There's just a ton of ways that knowing about the spiritual health and the discipleship process that your people are going through can help you make decisions in ministry. To me, it's one of those things where it's a subtle game changer, right? So like it's not going to change like the way you preach necessarily. It's not going to change. It's not going to be one of those things where it changes like your vision for the church. It just helps you to know what to talk about and how to lead your people in the right direction and taking the right steps at the right time. So It's that kind of like data-driven ministry, if you will. It's really something that I think is going to be a game changer personally.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, the next type of survey I'm going to talk about is number 2 is the demographic survey. So the demographic survey is probably what you would generally think of as like the census survey, or maybe like a survey that you've gotten a phone call from the Census Bureau and you've had to answer questions about like, you know, what you do for a living and how many kids you have and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's also might be the type of survey that if you're, I don't know if you remember this, maybe it's like back in the day they used to do this, but like if you were walking through a mall, like an indoor mall, and somebody had a clipboard and they walked up to you and like, sir, would you like a free drink or a free meal or $10 gift card or whatever? If you answer these 20 questions, come sit in here with us. And anyway, so those kind of demographic surveys, a lot of times they're painful and they're like, you know, they get in the way. There's a way to do those demographic surveys that's not painful, but as a ministry tool, demographic surveys are, can be hugely valuable. And I'm actually going to, again, hand it off to Kevin to talk about the usage of demographic surveys in ministry and how they can improve your ministry effectiveness.
Yeah. So when I think about demographic surveys, there's a friend of mine who runs a company that works with a lot of church communicators and works on church marketing. And she has this Facebook group, and pretty much every question that gets asked in there, her first response is, well, who's your audience? And it's one of those things where a lot of people can't answer it because they say, well, it's, you know, everyone inside of our city. Okay, well, what are they made up of? What is your city made up of? What are the people inside of your church made up of? And that's really a subtle but really important thing that we have to know if we want to communicate effectively. So I'm a marketing guy, I'm a data guy. So when we talk about surveys and we talk about data, I get excited just naturally. And one of the things that I get really excited about is knowing who our people are. And so in marketing, we call this a persona. And we kind of develop these ideas based off who we know our customer is, based off these surveys, what we know about them. And so at Trained Up, it's easy for us to kind of go in and see who our customers are kind of naturally, because we can look up their website. We can see, you know, how many people like their Facebook page, how many people follow them on Twitter, and get a good idea of how many services they're doing, their building size, and kind of figure out how many people are in their church and what type of positions they're doing and things like that. And so for us, we don't, you know, necessarily do this often inside of our business, but we can go in and see who our customers are pretty easily based on that data that's readily available. And so there are kind of two ways that you can do this inside of your church. So one, if your church has a Facebook page, you can go in and look at your audience insights, and you can kind of get a decent idea of the people that like your Facebook page, who they are. So if they're married, if they're men, they're women, their average age group, other things they like to do in your area, other pages they like. And so that's kind of the start of that. But I'd always encourage you to take it a step further and doing some sort of anonymous survey to your church members just to kind of figure out what's going on in their lives. So figuring out, are they married? Are they single? How old are they? Do they have kids? How many kids do they have? How old are they on average? What income range are they? And all these things are subtle things that help you define your message. They define how you talk about your church. They define the programs that you offer. They define everything you do as a body and how you target and try and reach new people. Because if your church and your average age is 55 and most people are older than that, and you're trying to attract millennials and Gen Z beyond that, and you know they come in and you're doing all these things in an old school way, you're probably not going to reach them very effectively. And so by doing these demographic surveys, it allows you to be more effective in ministry, because then you can really target your messaging a lot better to the people that you're actually already reaching. And then maybe also figure out some weak areas as well. So you can see kind of the engagement going towards a certain age range or a certain gender. You can try and start correcting that course little by little over time, so that way you can start to be more effective as a ministry.
So that's a good point with all the demographic surveys in the context of ministry, is that they're a rich source of data for your church to be able to make decisions about what you're going to do in ministry, how you're going to do it, systems that you need to build, the ways you need to, you know, the kind of language you need to use, the ways you need to talk about ministry in your church. And the thing is, like ministry leaders like us, we tend to think we know the demographics of our church because we can see the people on a Sunday morning. We can kind of look at some of the information about the people in our in groups in our church. But a lot of that is really just guesswork. You know, it doesn't really tell us a lot. It doesn't even tell us much more than just what are the age of the people and what is maybe their gender and race. And so beyond that, there's a lot of data that can help you as a ministry leader, just knowing more about your people, just about like the demographics of your people beyond the kind of surface level of age and gender and race and that sort of thing. So that's the demographic. That's okay. We've covered discipleship survey, demographic survey, and the third one is my personal favorite. It's near and dear to my heart, whereas discipleship is near and dear to to Kevin's heart. This one is my thing. This is the ministry tool that I'll probably use more than any other survey type. And you could say a couple of people talk about it in different ways. Pardon my stuttering there. People talk about it in different ways. Some people talk about it as an engagement survey. Some people talk about it as a happiness survey. I just like to talk about it as a volunteer team survey. And so I generally run two of these. I'm going to talk about both of them in a second. But the reason that you would run a volunteer engagement survey or a volunteer team survey is to measure something that is generally difficult to measure. And that's engagement. That's how bought in somebody is, how happy they are, how fulfilled they are in their role as a volunteer. And it tells you as a leader with, for the most part, quantitative data, how well you're doing as a leader. It tells you the state of how engaged your team is. It tells you, how are you doing with onboarding. It tells you how are you doing with recruiting the right kind of people. It tells you how you're doing with vision casting and making meaning out of the role that people are serving in. And so this engagement data or this engagement data you get from the engagement survey can then tell you individually, not just as a church at a high level, but help tell you individually what you can do specifically to improve your leadership of your own volunteer team. So there's two surveys that I like to run personally in my ministry. We've got both surveys as templates and samples on our website, on our blog. We're going to put that link in the show notes. So if you're listening to us on your phone or if you're watching on YouTube, you should be able to scroll down or underneath the show there. There's a link for it. To be able to get both templates and also see all of the questions in both surveys. The first survey is the volunteer follow-up survey. So when somebody joins your team, they usually go through some sort of orientation, kind of like get to know what they're supposed to be doing. Our churches on the Trained Up platform use Trained Up to onboard their new volunteers and to help get them completely trained up before they start serving. And then what we like to do is to then send a follow-up survey after someone served their first Sunday. And then ask a handful of questions about how was their experience? Did they feel like they knew what they were doing? Did they feel like they fit in their role? Did they like the team that they were working on? That immediate feedback from a new volunteer can be so valuable to help them put them in the right spot and also make sure that for the next new volunteer that you're doing as good a job as possible and bringing new volunteers on board. Because you and I know both that when the most critical time to get a volunteer engaged and to keep them from churning or quitting your team later on is to make sure that they join the team well. And so that follow-up survey is really important to help make sure that your process for onboarding new volunteers is really solid. The second volunteer team survey is the Pure Volunteer Engagement Survey. This is the kind of survey that you send to your team over and over, every quarter, maybe twice a year, and it asks the same exact questions, a lot like how Disciple Labs is designed to send the same survey over time. And you can see kind of, with this Disciple Labs, it's a lot more fancy. You can see actual graphs of like how people are doing and changes over time. Like it's pretty sweet how Disciple Labs is set up. But this volunteer engagement survey, you can just send it manually and do your best to kind of collate and make sense of the data afterward. But the engagement survey asks existing volunteers how well they're engaged with your ministry. So there's the one that we have on our website is a 20-question survey, and it goes through things like how fulfilled are you, how much energy do you have after a service, how excited are you when you get to serve on a Sunday morning or during the week. Asks a lot of engagement-related questions that gives you an idea of how your team is enjoying their roles. And it helps you then to, make decisions on how you can better care for your volunteers, how you can, show appreciation to your volunteers. Maybe some volunteers need ongoing training that you didn't know about. And that engagement survey can tell you kind of all of that. But so the survey, of course, as a ministry leader, gives me a lot of information, but it also communicates a lot to your volunteers. So that follow-up survey communicates to your volunteer that you care about them, that you care about their experience, that you want to do better and you want to improve the ministry. And for your volunteer engagement survey, it tells your existing volunteers that you want their ministry experience to be valuable, that you want their ministry experience to be fulfilling, and that you're willing and ready to work to make their experience fulfilling. And so honestly, that goes a long way to building trust, a long way to taking responsibility for your own ministry. And your people will feel that you care for them because you're asking how they're doing and asking kind of the penetrative questions there. So that's my passion. Those are the types of surveys that I love to use. I've used them with great success in my ministry. Honestly, those are the type of surveys that can actually start to mend relationships that may have been kind of broken. When somebody gets a survey and they're able to be honest with you about maybe something that they were afraid to bring up with you as their ministry leader, that'll open up a conversation that they may have been, a little bit more nervous to bring up with you in the past. So that's it for today. I think we've covered all three: the discipleship survey, the demographic survey, the volunteer team survey, and I think we're done. That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's a lot to process already.
It's a lot to process, and I talk fast, so it's even more. So to wrap things up, the show notes, there's a couple of links in the show notes, so check out the show notes. If you want to chat with us, we love talking with pastors. In fact, we love talking with ministry leaders and pastors so much that we have actually put a literal live chat on our website, and we chat with dozens and dozens of ministry leaders every week about what they're struggling with in ministry. We talk to them about their training needs, about their leadership needs. We talk to them about a lot of stuff that's completely unrelated to Trained Up, and we love talking with ministry leaders about that stuff. So go to our website, trainedup.church, and chat with us. We can talk about the podcast. If you have questions about surveys, let's talk about that. You can check out disciplelabs.com. There's also a chat there that mostly Kevin watches. So if you want to talk specifically with Kevin, I guarantee that he will be paying attention to the Disciple Labs chat module. So go to disciplelabs.com and chat with Kevin if you're curious about that. Guys, thank you so much for joining us this week. And if you didn't know, we post a new podcast every single week. So we will see you again next week. Thanks for joining us.